Fantastic. All right. I just realized I had not named my initial slide correctly here. So, all right, here we go. Well, welcome everybody. We have a pretty good crowd today, and this is actually a really exciting topic for me because this particular topic of process automation or using our workflow engine is a bit of a combination between the ITBM product line using project, resource, demand, as well as marrying that up to a platform feature that we use across all of our products called Flow Designer, or as we have called in the past, the workflow engine. So I'll talk a little bit about the Flow Designer if you're not familiar with it, what it can do, what it's designed to do, and what we're looking to expand on it in the future. And then I'll talk about a few different use cases that we have found for ITBM that have been useful for our customers. And then I'd like to open the floor up to discuss about the features we looked at, as well as anything that you guys have in your own business processes that you think might work for automation. Just have that discussion. And hopefully I can get out of that a couple of good ideas that I can put into my application here, which I'm going to demonstrate for you. So first, let's talk about Flow Designer. So if you're not familiar with the Flow Designer in ServiceNow, this is a product that was launched. I believe we went to market with this product, oh man, London. I think it was London. And this thing had been in the works for quite some time. So if you're familiar with ServiceNow's workflow engine, which was what was initially shipped with the product, it supported a lot of the processes behind change management. We also had ways to configure notifications and fire events, all that kind of stuff on the back end with a relatively low code way of doing that. So Flow Designer has taken that to the next level, and we've really exposed almost all of ServiceNow's functionality within that Flow Designer for you to be able to automate it. So the sky is really the limit. And it really consists of three different things. It consists of triggers, which is a trigger of some sort that you can define. So that might be when a project is inserted, or when a project of this type is inserted, or something to that effect. And then I'm going to do some action. So some action might be apply a project template, or create a project baseline, or some other activity. And then a subflow would be a way, if I had a more complicated workflow, to be able to attach multiple sub-processes to happen when my triggers flow or my flow starts to go through its process. So we have a lot of ways to containerize different process flows, as well as create your own actions, use our out-of-box ones, or and be able to define where that triggers in the system. So in addition to being able to automate process within the ServiceNow platform, there's also integrations. We've published, I think there's now 135 different point-to-point integrations that we have published on our Integration Hub. So if you're not familiar with Integration Hub, I would definitely encourage you to go check it out. There's a lot of different integrations we have pre-built with low to no code to be able to use these. So if you have any of the products that we support in our Integration Hub, certainly look into it. It's another way to be able to reach out to external systems in addition to ServiceNow to be able to either get information or push information into those other systems. We won't really be talking about a ton of this today. I don't have any integrations set up for my demo, but I have had customers in the past use things like the Microsoft integration to do various activities. Actually, I had a customer recently that wanted to have their governance meetings for their demands automatically created and put on Outlook calendars for stakeholders, which I thought was a kind of an interesting use case there. All right, so what I've created over the last few months, just because I've had to demonstrate this to quite a few different customers because there's a lot of interest around it, what I did was I created a application in ServiceNow called an ITBM Spoke. And in that application, I put my 3 example workflows. So I've got a baseline, project baseline automation, unified backlog automation, which is on the Agile side, and then a project template automation. And as you can see there in the screenshot in the lower right, there's actually now an ITBM Spoke underneath the installed spokes in our Flow Designer. It's not there out of the box. This is something that I created, but it's going to look very similar to, like, as you see right below it is the ITSM one. ITSM publishes one out of the box with their product, and it has a number of different actions in it that they can use. In our case, we have the 3 different actions for our 3 different use cases. So the first one is applying a project template. So in my example here, I'm looking at when a project is created. So when a project is created, what I want to do is apply a certain project template to it. So what that means is if I had some definitions, maybe even in the demand record or on the project record when it's created, as to what type of project that was, or maybe being able to have a way to map that to a certain template, I can do that. So all I need to do here is select my apply project template action, give it the project record that I'm going to be applying this to during my flow, and then selecting a template from my template library that I want to automatically apply. And what this will do is when you create the project, it will automatically throw that template onto the project as a schedule. It's a good way to be able to institute a little bit of governance over the projects that are being created, making sure that all of the tasks and everything are there for the PMs when they get assigned to the project. A lot of the PMO folks have found that this is useful simply because then they don't have to remember to apply project templates. They don't have to assign someone from the demands to apply a project template or anything like that. They can fully automate that process. And by the way, I'll go in if you want to see how these are working in the platform. I do have this set up in my instance, so we can go and look through this as well later on after I finish the initial part of this presentation. So the second one here is baseline automation. So this is taking a baseline on the project. Oftentimes this data we found for our customers is a little bit inconsistent because it's a manual effort in creating these baselines. Sometimes that's by design for your process, but for the most part, PMO leadership has said, I really wish there was a way for us to just automatically have this data all the time. Every time, every week, maybe we schedule this to happen, or anytime the project phase changes, we want this to happen, which is my example here on anytime I change a project phase, I want to create a baseline. And the only information I really need is the name of it. So in my case here, I've just named it the name of the phase and then the time that I took it. Give it a project ID that I'm taking that baseline for, and then decide whether or not I would like to take a financial, a task baseline, or both in my example here. And the last one on the list is unified backlog automation. So this is more on the agile side. We have a feature that we put into the product a few releases ago called unified backlog, actually a separate plugin in ServiceNow from the agile development plugin. And what that does is it allows customers to be able to have their Scrum teams automatically have access into any other record in the system that they would like to throw on their backlog. So what that allows them to do is be able to say, take an incident, for instance, and put it onto their backlog. However, it's a manual process, and those queues need to be defined for each Scrum team, which makes sense. But one of the things that we found useful is that if I could create a flow that looks at my backlog and I give it definitions of incidents. So for instance, if an incident is assigned to my Scrum team, I know that it needs development attention. I don't want to have to always constantly mine that queue. I'd love to have it just show up in my backlog. And based on the priority of that incident, I could go ahead and throw that into my sprint cycle automatically without me really having to do a ton of manual effort there outside of assigning a resource and putting points or whatever scoping information I need on that particular story. So this is another thing that also works particularly well if you're using an integration. So I mentioned on Integration Hub earlier, that is, we have a lot of customers that like to integrate with products like Jira or Microsoft's ADO, Azure DevOps. If that's the case, this particular automation feature is going to make the workflow from ServiceNow's incident management, operational requests, straight into our backlog, and then the integration would pick that up and throw it into ADO. So with this automation, you're essentially creating a seamless flow between ADO or Jira and ServiceNow's incident and service desk management. So particularly nice use case for our customers that are living in the Scrum world. Okay, I'm gonna jump in now to the platform, but what I'll do before I do that is I'll open it up for any questions or comments at all. Nope, no questions or comments. So I'll jump into the platform now. Alrighty. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is we'll talk through the project template piece. So that would be this one here, this automate project template. So what this is essentially doing is I'm going to go create a project right now, and I'll show you what happens. So I've defined this particular flow to have my full governance model be applied to this project. So let's go over and create a project record. Now, more than likely, for a lot of our customers' processes, this project would be created as a result of a demand. But just for our cases, I'm going to create the project here on manually. Okay. So as you can see, it's actually already kind of started filling in my task schedule here. And that's just, this is all a stem from the integration. So anytime I got this project created now, that's going to go ahead and flow and throw my project template in here. It's using the same technology that we use when you click, when we don't have a schedule applied to a project, and you'll see that little banner up at the top. It's that same, that same feature that does this. All right. The next one in here is baseline automation. So in my case here, I mentioned when the project phase changes, I want to create a baseline in my project. So now I can go right in here, and if I change my phase, which is on my details tab, I change it to planning. And now you can see a baseline has been populated down here. Completely autonomous anytime I change a phase. And this, and once again, I've picked this as an example, but you could use any field that's available on the project record or even the demand record, anywhere where you can derive some sort of a trigger, then we can go ahead and create a baseline for that. So it's up to you really how you want to make that work. And you could actually create multiple flows that have multiple different criteria for taking baselines depending on the type of project or whatever it is, or even portfolio. Finally, this one is a little bit more complicated. So what I've done in my example here is I've looked at an incident. So I'd said, you know what, when an incident is assigned to my ServiceNow team, I want to automatically add that incident into my ServiceNow team's backlog. And that's what this does here. I simply define that. So when I go into an incident record, well, first of all, I'm going to look at my Agile board. So right now I'm looking at my ServiceNow team. They do not have anything in their backlog currently. I think there might be a few items in here. Yeah, okay, so I have a few items that haven't been planned yet. So what's gonna happen is when an incident is assigned to my ServiceNow team, normally what I'd have to do is I'd have to go into the triage board here, which is what I was telling you about before, and go in and select some of these out of here, right? You can see I don't have any incidents in here right now. So what I'm gonna do is go create an incident, assign it to my ServiceNow team, and then see what happens. All right, now let's take a look and see what happens here. So I go back to that backlog. I've got a few incidents in here. Give about a second to run. Sometimes the flow takes a few seconds to initiate. Let me make sure I'm looking at the right backlog here. Refresh one more time. So yeah, it's live demo for you. But anyway, so when that ran, what I would have is something like this. So you can see the test approval activity here. So this particular incident came into my backlog, and with that, by doing that automatically, what happens here is our unified backlog would give you the incident information. So your Scrum team would have information here about the incident, and also be able to see anything that the service desk technician had done to help the customer. And then it also automatically creates a story for you. And this is great for like I said, if you're doing any sort of integration into Jira or into ADO, you have a way to be able to track service desk tickets through the ServiceNow's story table, and then synced over to whatever product that your developers are using. And you would have all of this information in here. So this record is pretty vanilla when it gets pulled onto the backlog, mainly because at this point, the Scrum team would then go in and scope this. Put in points, assign a developer or a Scrum team member, relate it to a release or a sprint, drag it into their latest sprint maybe, put some acceptance criteria, all the kind of things that you would do as part of an agile team that's not necessarily on an incident record to translate into. But once you fill that in, then this can go right on your backlog and easily be able to transition between the two. Okay. That is all I had to demonstrate. I guess I'll open the floor up now to everybody as far as, now that you've kind of seen how Flow Designer can work with ITBM in a pretty simple fashion here, right? We're not talking very complicated tasks here with what I demonstrated, but I have seen the Flow Designer used in a more complicated manner as well. So I just open the floor up to everybody as far as what kind of processes do you have within your organization that you think would benefit from some automation?
Who would like to go first? Silence. Guess it's the Friday silence. Are there any particular areas that you guys saw?
I see David Rose's hand here.
Okay, go for it, David. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Charles. One of the things that we're looking at with our environment is how to, because we're getting ready to do Jira with the integration hub spokes, as well as looking at spokes with like SharePoint and MS Teams and OEM, trying to get a baseline understanding of how to use the Flow Designer to make those as seamless as possible. So I guess I know you didn't prep that for this demonstration, but if you can talk to it a little bit more, it'd be helpful.
Yeah. So what were the use cases that you were trying to tackle with those integrations?
So for us, we have customers who utilize Jira in a government space. So I have multiple state agencies who use Jira that they want to align with ServiceNow, so they have an end-to-end kind of workspace. We've got MS Teams and SharePoint for communications at agencies, communication hubs across multiple state agencies, and then OEM is across a couple of other state agencies as well, just trying to get a better tracking of what's going on with tickets, what's going on with incidents, how can we better relate problems. So.
Yeah, so that unified backlog piece would be particularly useful for you, right? So you could plug your teams into the service desk and the service management side. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly. So what I just showed you there, that last one, that will essentially automate entirely the process of going into Jira or going into ADO or whatever spoke you're using, because you can use those spokes straight on the flow. So let me see if I actually have an example here. So if I go to that flow, the one thing that you will be able to plug in here is you'll be able to plug in, I actually got them in here, say your Jira spoke. Right here. We actually have multiple Jira plugins. We have the Jira spoke on Flow Designer, which is a unidirectional integration, and then we also have a bidirectional integration that the ITBM team published out on the ServiceNow store. So it's actually a two-way integration. So if you do need two-way for Jira, we have that as well.
But you also have to have the ITBM licensing. Does it have to be at a certain level? Do you know?
No. Actually, we sell it a little bit differently. So we have a package called DevOps Starter Package that includes that. So it can be licensed separately than ITBM.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. The way we package it for you. So we create a little bit more value than just one spoke. So you get a DevOps Starter Pack, which I think includes Jira, and like Docker and a whole bunch of other spokes that are more DevOps. So I think an ADO one. So yeah. Right, so you could plug your thing right into here. So if I could find Jira. Maybe I don't have it installed. Maybe it's in our DevOps spoke here. So we have one in here called DevOps. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right, because I don't have them installed in my system. But yeah, so what we basically do, you'd go in here, and there's Microsoft Teams one as well, which looks like I do have installed. And you could go ahead and say, like, anytime a project created, I want to create a channel in Microsoft Teams for that project, for instance. That would be something you could do as well. You could even do that right in the same flow as put my baseline, put my project plan in there and create a channel, and then populate a field on the project record with a link to the channel. Like you could do something like that automatically with Flow Designer. And that's just as simple as, adding in these spokes here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Ben, this is Chuck Huntley at Novant Help. This was really cool to see such a practical use case, right? I think with Integration Hub, we always try to think of these hard things to conquer, but, getting a project manager to remember to set a baseline, it's always historically been that manual step and either overlooked or, so this is like a really simple, easy way to help with that compliance. So I appreciate that. So it's got me thinking, and I don't know if, I'm sitting here thinking, right, like if a resource on the project is 90% capacity, right? Do you automate that resource request for more, right?
Yeah, so there's another that's a really good one, right?
Yeah. Like what are the things that PMs have to do manually that, that are just mundane, right? And then, sorry, not to step on your toes there. You mentioned the Teams one, and I'm trying to think from a project and ITBM standpoint how we could do it. We are using it from where it posts an incident to our Teams channel for that group. So maybe you could do something else like that, right? Yeah. If there's a risk or an issue or a decision, whatever makes sense to post over to that Teams channel, just like you would an incident or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
So this is really cool.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that you can kind of configure those flows in for your teams to be able to get information in single places, especially within the different utilities. So integrating between things is certainly a great use case. I love the one with resource management. So we've even thought of a few other ones for resource management. You don't actually need anything special to do that because out of the box, one thing I haven't really demonstrated here was, let me actually just open up a new flow. So what you can do straight out of the box, we have as the core spokes that we publish, we actually have one for like looking up records. So look up a record or a set of records. So what you can do is say, based on a trigger, let's say, my resource plan is getting close to 90% capacity. So in your example, you could create, like a task or a notification, or even kick off the process of requesting more hours or something like that. Or I'm not sure really what the action would be, but you could trigger it right off of that using that lookup record function alongside of the trigger function. So you don't need anything special. You don't need to code anything special. In my examples, I made a few actions, but in that example, you wouldn't even need to make an action. You could just configure it. So I think that's like some really easy stuff to pick off. So I can actually tell you this, so that this idea has resonated a lot through customers. So what ServiceNow is looking to do at some point, we haven't put this on our roadmap officially yet, but what we want to do is be able to publish something like this out in the store, so that you can have these capabilities and these just tools and actions to do whatever you need to do and install it and have it look exactly like this. So like when I go to an action in one of my flows, I would actually see, if I had installed that off of the store, I would see a spoke here, So it would be nice to be able to provide this stuff to our customers, just simply because it's not always stuff that everyone's thinking about or even knows that they can do in ServiceNow. So publishing these use cases and some of the content that goes with it is something that we're definitely looking into.
Are there any other use cases out there for customers that?
Or even if you think of one like that you may or may not think could be done in Flow Designer, or it's just a cumbersome activity.
Can we mute?
I think we have feedback.
Okay, go ahead, try it now, Ben.
All right, I think we're good.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So anyway, as I was saying, even if it's a use case that as your teams are doing work and there's just cumbersome activities that they have to do, do they have to collate information, or do they have to reach out to certain people? Are there scheduled things? I know that I've had some examples from security teams, for instance. This isn't even necessarily, this is more on the operational side. Security teams doing scheduled health checks, for instance. I think I had a customer that I was speaking with the other day. I don't remember who it was, but they had some use cases where every day or every week or month or quarterly, they needed to do health checks on certain systems for security reasons. And what they wanted to do was have tasks automated to be able to dole out to their team to have these things done, and then be able to report on them and that kind of thing. So you could use Flow Designer in that capacity as well. Whether that's a project that you're creating specifically for a security initiative, or that's just simply tasks in our system to do operational work. It can all be done within Flow Designer. The one thing I didn't mention here was that the Flow Designer can also be used for time tracking as well. So we found is, especially that workflow behind the scenes of approving a time card or automatically approving a time card based on something. Those are all things that, some of that we do have out of the box in the time card application, but anything beyond just a simple approval, you could use the Flow Designer to accommodate yourself there. And one of the use cases that I have seen is, it's a way for customers to be able to create operational resource plans, and then take things like incidents, changes, all these other record types that people work on and book time to, and reconcile that time against a resource plan by using the Flow Designer to automatically route certain types of work against that resource plan. So don't always have to think of the Flow Designer necessarily doing something that's right next to the human, something like a baseline, but can also be something under the covers to help you report a little bit better, or help with data quality.
That's good stuff, Ben. I'm going to actually ask hopefully a simple question to the team and the other customers that are out there. Are there any particular use cases that are kind of running through your mind where you're like, is this a possible fit, or is this something that wouldn't be applicable, something that would be more applicable that you may be struggling with right now that might fit some of these applications that Ben is talking about? Any that you've seen that work pretty well that you want to share? Dana, I see you with your hand up there.
So actually, I had a question about, have you ever worked with a use case for closing projects and like automating that process? We have project managers that, you know, they work on their projects, but they tend to forget to go do that step. So we have them hanging out there for a year and not closing out, and closing those, you know, canceling the remainder on those resource plans.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great, like a great little rule that the PMO could have. So you could say something like, okay, every project manager, if you don't close the project within, say, I don't know what, 6 months of the end date, then it's going to automatically close unless you do something, you know? If there's activity on the project, then, and then it wouldn't. But, you know, like, so you could do something like that where with a flow. Yeah, absolutely. So you could do that. It would also close all the resource plans. So that's really kind of the more important piece.
Yeah, because that was kind of, I know you can, like, I can visualize closing it, like setting it to closed, complete or closed incomplete, whatever you set up, right, to set the status. But, you know, there's that manual step when you close a project to go complete out all those resource plans.
Yes. So yes, you could automate that piece. And I've done it for customers in the past. So this is a configuration that other customers have made.
Awesome.
Yes. And took me 5 minutes to set up. So, I mean,
that is exciting.
Low effort, high value. So that's definitely one. Yeah. And that's also another real simple one. I should add that one onto this list. That one doesn't actually even require any, you know, fancy actions or anything. That's just look up the record. You know, if it's past this date, then close it out. And then there is another step to closing the resource plans. It's just one more action in that flow, which looks at the resource plan and closes those records out. Because out of the box, we tell you that there's resource plans, but we don't actually physically close them for you when you close the project. So that is the one kind of piece. You do get a warning message when you're about to close the project, as you're probably aware, but it doesn't do it automatically. So that's where this flow would be particularly useful, right? Where you don't have to do that manually.
And then you can stop babysitting those projects and say, you know, do we have a bunch of resource plans out there that are really no longer valid, that's skewing our capacity?
Yeah, I would, like, if you instituted this, I'd be really curious to track some metrics and see how efficient the resource, just because the resource data will be so much better. Like what were you missing out on by assuming resources were locked on a project that weren't, you know, like when you're looking at planning. So like if you're looking at like a capacity management view, you know, and you had open projects with resource plans that say still had some hours on them. Technically, you've got those resources still locked up for hours, but you might not notice because it's going to be a small amount in the grand scheme of all of the requests that come into the system. So I'd be curious to see what the numbers are actually behind just instituting a simple thing like this to help with data quality. It'd be interesting to see like the difference in the numbers on the charts. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, you know what? I may even have code for that in here, now that you mentioned that. Let me see if I do. Ah, yeah, right here. You want this? I can send this out. This does what you're asking.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Love it.
I had to do a little
Please
bit.
share.
Yeah, I'll send this out to the invite just so you guys have it.
Awesome.
Yeah, so this is this one does exactly that. So this in my example here, I was looking at if I had a project that was in any of these states, right? So basically you would create another flow to close the project on a schedule, but this would be like your subflow of closing the resource plans. And then it looks at all the plans for that project, and then it sets them to complete it. So yeah, I'll send this out. But right, so this is exactly the thing I can configure for another customer. So it's a definitely good use case.
All right, others, any other questions?
Actually, I do. I know that this is related to ITBM, and this is Tina at Wellstar. Um, and ever since Flow Designer came out, I'm the only one on our team that kind of took a knack for it. So everybody's like, you figure that out. And I really like it because I'm able to quickly do some things in lists that I don't have to manually touch anymore. So I do a lot of those. And if I just run the test, it does it for me. So I like it. But my question is actually outside of ITBM, where I'm attempting to do something with a service catalog. Would that be another
Oh yeah,
office
absolutely.
hour, or
Oh, I don't
can
know.
I ask the question here?
Oh, you can ask the question and I can give you the answer to the best of my knowledge.
Okay, so what I'm attempting to do is, so we have an enhancement record producer, and it has a workflow that we're using the typical workflow in ServiceNow to use. And that piece functions fine, but what I'm trying to do, and I have a ticket open to high, is where I can roll back approvals based on if someone selected something incorrectly. And I haven't been able to do that in a workflow, but I was wondering if Flow Designer could do that for me.
Yeah, so there is, I don't know if you've tried it. So there's an action in here called, there's the ask for approval. There is a rollback function.
Yeah, I tried the rollback in the regular workflow editor, but it's not working for me the way we expect it.
I want to say there is a specifically for service catalog. No, I guess these are all create. I thought there was a rollback function in here. Now, oh, you know what? Yeah, there's not an actual action for it, but okay, I think I know how they did this. Okay, so if you were to do an approval, so I'll do ask for approval, right? In here. So let your trigger is when when an enhancement is created. Oh, come on. Created.
That's Ben talking, right?
Yes, this is Ben. Hi, Tina.
Hey.
So, okay, enhancements created, right? So then I'm going to ask for approval, and this might be so your enhancement record would come from the record producer that you're talking about.
Right.
This gets inserted. Approval. Say something gets messed up.
Right.
So what you would have to do is, I think instead of rolling it back necessarily, I think you would end up with like some flow logic in here to say, have some sort of trigger on that record where if it's something that I need to roll back for approval, like I believe you could expose the approval field on the form if you wanted and have it maybe only editable by an admin or something to that extent.
Okay.
If it's something you need to do manually. Or if you know specifically the information that needs to be put in on the enhancement record, maybe don't even allow it to be approved unless the enhancement record has certain information there.
Would I need to put the entire workflow in here, or can I have both? Can I have a workflow running the typical way from the workflow editor?
Could, but
I mean,
from a management perspective, though, I think I'd want to containerize it all in one. And I would use the flow designer for it. I would disable the out-of-box one and then do your approvals through here. That way you can start to tack onto this, add subflows, create actions. You have way more flexibility here than you do in the workflow engine. So,
and I know what I'll be playing with this weekend. Okay, thank you so much, Ben.
Yeah, let me know how that goes.
Okay, I will.
I almost feel like we should play Stump Ben.
Yeah. That's always a fun game.
It's like, it seems like you always have the good answer, which is very applicable, and I really appreciate how you do that, Ben. Other
questions? Do you know if there's any classes out there on Now Learning, any free classes for Flow Designer?
Absolutely. So there's a few, I think. So it depends on what you want to learn. If you just want a basic fundamentals, we have a Flow Designer fundamentals class. So you guys see my screen, right? Okay. So this is our thing. So you'll actually see if I go, where's there's a search function here somewhere. think I'm logged in as myself.
It's under the banner up top.
Is it?
Close the banner.
Oh, the COVID-19 thing. There we go. That's great. We love doing that. Okay, so yeah, Flow Designer Fundamentals. So it's not a very long class. It's
Okay.
I think it's self-paced. So Flow Designer
My
Fundamentals.
favorite.
Curio. This one is, I believe there's like 8 sections maybe in here.
Okay.
Yeah, so definitely a good overview. Oh yeah, you said just a quick 3 modules, but it gives you the, it helps you build a flow, learn what a subflow is, how to build an action, how to use them. So 4 hours of time here.
Okay.
So this is a good one, and then there's a micro cert for this as well. So we do like have people get certified on Flow Designer, but then there's and we do call this an intermediate level thing. I really think it's, I mean, even if you don't know much about it, I think it's pretty simple to follow. But
Yeah, I was able to catch on pretty quickly, and I really like it. I definitely prefer it better than the regular workflow editor. So I quickly embraced it.
This just, for a little history here, this feature had been in the works for 5 or 6 years before we had deployed it in the London release. So this has been a very long time coming. I think right after we launched a couple of different products that had the workflow engine behind it years ago, we kind of noticed right away that this needed to be a better user experience, and we needed to make this low, no code and very functional. And we're getting there. I wouldn't say we're 100% there yet, but with all those new integration hub spokes, there's not much that we can't do with this. There is another one as well. I don't know if it's called Flow Designer, but our DevOps implementer training, which I believe this one might be a pay for one. So if you're more on the agile side of things and you want to learn how to use the Flow Designer to integrate between different products.
Yeah, we are getting to that level. So I will definitely take a look. Thanks so much, Ben.
Yeah,
I do have to drop off, but I've asked Charles to send the recording. But thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
You bet. Take care, Tina.
Alrighty.
All right. We have about 15 minutes left. Any other questions or comments or any other areas, Ben, you wanted to cover, given the feedback that we had so far?
Yeah, I think I've thought about everything that I can think about. I was just hoping, I'm hoping people give me other ideas. Kind of leaning on the crowd here.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, as we move forward with this in product management, we'll certainly start to communicate if we ever are going to put something like this out in the store, or we have any materials that are come out around automation. I think it's something that's not talked about as much, and I think it can help a lot of us out with our general day-to-day workflows that we configure for all of our users.
Great. All right, customers, you got about 14 minutes left. Any one of you have any random questions now? Open it up to the floor just around ITBM while we have Ben here, outside of just Flow Designer. If not, are we thinking we'll be able to adjourn early for Friday? I thought that would kind of, I guess everyone's okay then. Steve, Rob, Glenn, anyone? Jack, Laurel, Heather, Garrett, DJ, David. All right, I think we're good to go. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm going to be sending out a recording to those who wish to have that recording, as well as a survey. Please take some time to respond to that. It helps inform our surveys. Thank you, Ben, as always. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your Friday. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Everybody.
Thank you.